We call this ambition. We call this drive. We call this success. Bruce Lee called it something else. He called it wasting your life by being too busy to live it. Now, before we go any further, I need to tell you the truth about this story. Bruce Lee died in July 1973. Dwayne Johnson, the man the world knows as The Rock, was born in May 1972. He was 14 months old when Bruce Lee left this world. They never met. They never could have met. The timeline makes it impossible. And yet, what if time is not as solid as we believe? What if the lessons we need find us regardless of when we live? What if a man who died before you could walk somehow teaches you the most important thing you will ever learn? This is not history. This is something else. Call it a dream. Call it a vision. Call it a conversation that happened in a space where calendars do not apply and clocks have no meaning. I am going to tell you about the night Dwayne Johnson stopped rushing. Are you ready to stop rushing with him? Then come with me. He was 23 years old and he was drowning. Not in water. In everything else. In expectations and failures and bills he could not pay. In a football career that had just collapsed. In a relationship that was crumbling. In a future that looked like a wall with no doors and no windows and no way through. Dwayne Johnson sat in his apartment in Tampa, Florida, and he could not breathe. I want you to understand something about this moment. This was not The Rock. The Rock did not exist yet. The muscles, the movies, the millions of followers, the empire built on charisma and discipline and relentless work. None of that had happened. What existed in that apartment was a young man who had just been cut from the Canadian Football League. A young man with $7 in his pocket. A young man whose father had been a professional wrestler and whose family expected him to be something, anything, and who was currently nothing at all. Have you ever felt that? The weight of being nothing when you were supposed to be something? The suffocating pressure of potential that has not yet become reality? If you have, then you know what Dwayne Johnson was feeling that night. And you know why what happened next mattered so much. He could not sleep. He had not slept properly in weeks. His mind would not stop running through the failures, the mistakes, the moments when he should have been better, faster, stronger, more. He had been rushing his entire life. Rushing to prove himself. Rushing to escape his circumstances. Rushing toward a destination that kept disappearing every time he got close. And now, at 23, he had rushed himself into a dead end. He left his apartment sometime after midnight. Not because he had anywhere to go. Because staying still felt impossible. Because the walls were closing in and he needed to move. Needed to feel like he was doing something even if he had no idea what. He walked. Through empty streets. Past closed businesses. Into parts of Tampa that he did not recognize and probably should not have been walking through alone at 2 in the morning. He did not care. What was the worst that could happen? His life was already falling apart. A mugging would almost be a relief. Something external to fight instead of this internal war he kept losing. The gym appeared like a mirage. It was a small place, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The kind of gym that serious lifters knew about and everyone else ignored. The lights were on, which made no sense at this hour. The door was unlocked, which made even less sense. Dwayne walked in without thinking. Maybe someone had forgotten to close up. Maybe he could get a workout in, burn off some of this energy that was eating him alive. Maybe he could feel, for just an hour, like he had some control over something. The gym was empty. Old equipment, well-maintained but decades out of date. Free weights and benches and a few machines that looked like they belonged in a museum. No music playing. No televisions mounted on walls. Just iron and silence and the faint smell of chalk and sweat that never quite leaves places like this. And in the far corner, a man doing something Dwayne did not recognize. He was small, Asian, moving through a series of exercises that flowed one into another like water finding its path downhill. There was no effort visible in his movement. No stran, no rushing. He was simply moving, existing in motion, present in each moment without reaching for the next. Dwayne stood frozen in the doorway, watching. Something about this man's presence made the chaos in his mind go quiet for the first time in weeks. The man finished his sequence and turned. His eyes met Dwayne's, and there was a recognition there that made no sense. How could this stranger recognize someone who had not yet become anyone? "You look like you have been running for a long time," the man said. His voice was calm, unhurried, each word given exactly the time it needed. "But you do not look like you know where you are going." Dwayne opened his mouth to respond, to explain, to defend himself. But what came out surprised him. "I don't know where I'm going. I don't know anything anymore. I thought I did. I had a plan. I had a path. And now it's gone and I don't know who I am without it." The words spilled out like water from a broken dam. He had not said them to anyone. He had barely admitted them to himself. But something about this stranger, this small man in the empty gym, made honesty feel not just possible but necessary. "Come. Sit." The man gestured to a bench, and Dwayne found himself obeying without question. He sat. The stranger sat across from him, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to give space. "I am going to tell you something," the man said. "Something that took me many years to learn. Something that I wish someone had told me when I was your age, burning with ambition and terrified of failure." He paused, and his eyes held Dwayne's with an intensity that felt almost physical. "If you love life, do not waste time, for time is what life is made of." Dwayne frowned. "I don't waste time. That's the opposite of my problem. I work constantly. I train constantly. I never stop pushing. And yet here you are, exhausted, lost, running so fast that you have left yourself behind." The man shook his head slowly. "You have confused activity with progress, movement with meaning. You fill every moment with effort, and you call this not wasting time. But what if the opposite is true? What if your constant rushing is the greatest waste of all?" "I don't understand." "No, you do not. That is why you are here." If this question is starting to form in your own mind, if you are wondering whether your own rushing might be a form of waste, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Because what this stranger said next changed everything. The man stood and walked to the center of the gym. He gestured for Dwayne to join him. "Stand here, face me, and do nothing." Dwayne stood where indicated. "What do you mean, do nothing?" "Exactly what I said. Do nothing. Stand still. Breathe. Exist. For the next 60 seconds, your only task is to be here. Not preparing for something. Not recovering from something. Just here. Can you do that?" It sounded absurd. It sounded like a waste of the very time this man had just said was so precious. But something in his voice made Dwayne want to try. "Okay, 60 seconds. I can do that." He could not do it. Within 5 seconds, his weight shifted. Within 10, his hands clenched. Within 20, his mind was racing through tomorrow's problems, yesterday's failures, everything except this moment right here. His body could not stop preparing for the next thing. His thoughts could not stop rehearsing conversations that had not happened and might never happen. 30 seconds, he broke. I can't just stand here. I feel like I'm wasting time." The man smiled, and there was no judgment in it. Only understanding. "Now you see the problem. You have trained yourself to be incapable of stillness. You have practiced rushing so consistently that you have forgotten how to stop. And because you cannot stop, you cannot see. You cannot feel. You cannot know what you actually want, because every moment you spend in pursuit of what you think you want." He stepped closer, his presence somehow filling the space despite his small stature. "You asked who you are without your path. But you have never known who you are. You have only known what you are chasing. You have defined yourself by your destinations, and now that the destination has been taken away, you believe you have nothing. But this is backwards. You are not your goals. You are not your achievements. You are not the path you walk. You are the one who walks." Dwayne felt something crack inside him. Not break, crack, like a shell that had been too tight finally developing a fissure. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. "Even now, standing here talking to you, part of me is calculating how this conversation might be useful, how I might turn this into something. I can't just be." "I know. This is not your fault. You were taught this by a world that measures worth in productivity. by a culture that treats stillness as laziness and presence as passivity. You learned to rush because rushing was rewarded. But the reward was a trap. The man walked to a window that looked out on the empty street. The city was silent. The night pressed against the glass like a patient animal. "Let me tell you about time," he said. "We speak of wasting time as if time were something we possess, as if we have a limited supply that we must spend wisely. But this is an illusion. We do not have time. We are time. Each moment is not a resource to be used. It is a breath of existence itself. When you rush through a moment to get to the next one, you are not saving time. You are erasing yourself. You are trading your life for a future that never actually arrives." He turned back to face Dwayne. "Think about it. Have you ever arrived? Has there ever been a moment when you said, 'Now I am here. Now I can stop rushing. Now I can finally live'? Or does each achievement simply reveal the next thing you must chase?" Dwayne thought about his football career. How making the team had immediately become about getting more playing time. How playing time had become about going pro. How going pro had become about starting. How every achievement had dissolved the moment he reached it, replaced instantly by the next thing he lacked. "I've never arrived," he said slowly. "Every time I think I'm about to, the finish line moves. Because you are chasing a mirage. The finish line does not exist. There is no future moment when you will be allowed to stop. There is only now. This moment, this breath, this conversation. And if you cannot find peace here, you will never find it anywhere, no matter how much you achieve." The crack inside Dwayne widened. He felt something shifting, rearranging, making space for a truth he had never been able to see. "But how do I stop? How do I just be here, when everything in me is screaming to move, to do, to become?" The man smiled again. "That is the right question. The first right question you have asked." He walked to the weight rack and picked up 2 light dumbbells, maybe 5 pounds each. He handed them to Dwayne. "You know how to lift. This is your language. So let me speak to you in your language." Dwayne took the weights, confused by their lightness. He could curl 100 pounds. These felt like toys. Curl them, slowly, as you can possibly move. Dwayne began a curl. He tried to move slowly, but within seconds he had completed the movement. Fast, efficient, the way he always trained. Again, slower. He tried again. A little slower this time, but still fast by any reasonable standard. Again, take 30 seconds for a single repetition. 30 seconds. For a movement that normally took one. It seemed impossible. But Dwayne tried. The weights trembled in his hands. Not from strain, they were far too light for that. From the effort of restraint. Every muscle in his body wanted to complete the movement, to get it done, to move on to the next rep. Slowing down was harder than speeding up had ever been. At 15 seconds, he was sweating. At 20, he was shaking. At 25, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt the movement, not the goal, not the completion, not the rep count or the weight lifted or the progress made. He felt the actual experience of his bicep contracting, of the weight resisting, of his body working against gravity in real time. He was inside the moment instead of rushing past it. At 30 seconds, he completed the curl, and tears were streaming down his face. "Do you feel that?" the man asked softly. Dwayne nodded, unable to speak. "That is what you have been missing. That is what you have been rushing past in your hurry to arrive. Every moment of your life contains that depth of experience. Every breath, every step, every conversation. But you have been moving so fast that you have felt none of it. You have been alive without living." The weights fell from Dwayne's hands. He sank onto a bench, overwhelmed by a grief he did not fully understand. Grief for all the moments he had wasted by treating them as obstacles between him and some future that never came. Grief for the years of his life that had passed in a blur of striving without experiencing. The man sat beside him, not touching, just present. "Your football career is over. This is true. But something else is also true. You are 23 years old. You are strong and healthy, and you have decades ahead of you. The question is not what you will achieve in those decades. The question is whether you will be present for them. He paused, letting the words settle. You will build an empire, Dwayne. I see it in you. The drive that brought you to this gym at 2 in the morning. The hunger that will not let you rest. These are powerful forces. You will channel them into something the world has never seen. You will become more successful than you can currently imagine. How do you know that? The man smiled mysteriously. Call it intuition. Call it recognition. Some people carry their future in their eyes, and yours burns very bright. But what if you're wrong? What if I'm just done? What if the football thing was my only shot? There are no only shots. There are only moments. And this moment right now is asking you to make a choice. Will you continue rushing toward futures that dissolve when you reach them? Or will you learn to be where you are, fully and completely, and trust that the path will reveal itself to someone who is present enough to see it? 5 seconds of silence followed. 5 seconds in which Dwayne Johnson, who would become The Rock, who would become one of the biggest stars in the world, made a decision that would shape everything that followed. Teach me, he said. Teach me how to stop rushing. The man nodded slowly. It cannot be taught in one night. It is a practice that lasts a lifetime. But I can give you a beginning. For the next 3 hours, as the night slowly surrendered to dawn, the stranger taught Dwayne Johnson something that no football coach or trainer had ever mentioned. He taught him how to be still, how to breathe without reaching for the next breath, how to exist in a moment without immediately evacuating it for the next one. It was the hardest training Dwayne had ever done. Harder than any workout, any practice, any physical challenge. Because the enemy was not external. The enemy was the rushing that had become so habitual it felt like survival. Your mind will resist this, the man explained. It will tell you that stillness is death, that stopping means falling behind, that presence is a luxury you cannot afford. These are lies. They are the lies of a culture that profits from your restlessness. The truth is the opposite. Stillness is life. Presence is power. And you can only afford to rush if you do not love being alive. As the first light of dawn began to seep through the gym windows, the stranger stood to leave. Wait, Dwayne said. I don't even know your name. Will I see you again? The man paused at the door. He turned back, and something in his expression was both ancient and immediate, as if he existed outside of time altogether. My name does not matter. What matters is what you do with this night. Whether you return to rushing tomorrow, or whether you practice presence for the rest of your life. He opened the door, and the early morning light silhouetted him like a figure from a dream. Remember, Dwayne, if you love life, do not waste time. Not by being idle, but by being absent. Be in your life, all the way in. Whatever you do next, do it with your whole self present. That is the only success that matters. That is the only achievement that does not dissolve the moment you reach it. Then he was gone. Into the Tampa morning. Into the realm of legends and maybe it happened and stories that change lives regardless of their literal truth. Dwayne sat alone in the gym for a long time after the stranger left. The weights were still scattered where he had dropped them. The dawn was painting the walls in shades of gold and pink. And something inside him had permanently shifted. He did not know yet that he would become The Rock. He did not know about the wrestling career that would make him famous, the movie career that would make him legendary, the empire that would make him one of the most recognized people on the planet. He did not know any of that. But he knew something more important. He knew how to be where he was. The decades that followed proved the stranger right. Dwayne Johnson built exactly the empire the man had predicted. But he built it differently than he would have before that night. He built it with presence, with attention, with the hard-won ability to be fully in each moment instead of rushing through it toward the next achievement. Those who worked with him over the years often commented on something unusual. The Rock was driven, yes, disciplined, absolutely, but he was also remarkably present. He remembered names. He looked people in the eyes. He gave each conversation his complete attention, as if nothing else existed in the world. In an industry full of people climbing over each other to reach the next level, he seemed to actually be where he was. The secret, he told an interviewer decades later, is that I learned the difference between wasting time and wasting life. You can be incredibly productive and still waste your life if you're never actually present for it. You can be still and silent and present, and that's the most valuable use of time possible. It's not about how much you do. It's about how much of you is there when you do it. The interviewer asked where he had learned this. The Rock smiled, a strange, private smile that suggested memories too personal to share. Someone taught me, a long time ago, in a gym in Tampa. I never got his name. He paused, and something flickered in his eyes. But I never forgot what he said. If you love life, don't waste time. For time is what life is made of. I think about that every single day. And it changed everything. Thank you for being here. Not just watching. Being here. Present with me for these minutes while I told you this story. If something in it resonated, if you felt a crack forming in your own shell of rushing, please subscribe to this channel. Not so we can grow our numbers, so we can continue having conversations like this one. Conversations that ask you to stop, just for a moment, and consider whether the life you are rushing through might be worth experiencing. I want to leave you with a question, not a rhetorical question, a real one. One I hope you will actually answer, if only to yourself. When did you last feel a moment? Not accomplish something in a moment. Not use a moment to get somewhere. Just feel it. Be in it. Let it be enough without needing it to lead somewhere. If you cannot remember, that is okay. Neither could Dwayne Johnson that night in Tampa. But he learned. And so can you. If you love life, do not waste time. Not by being idle. By being absent. Be here. All the way here. That is the only success that matters.